What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Bleed. It's Al Mac. This is the recap. UFC 259 is in the books. 15 fights. We're going to bring you a main card recap. Oh boy, this was a crazy night, man. Some really unexpected stuff. I mean, from the prelims all the way through this card, absolute action. Crazy results, the rarest of results. We got a lot to talk about tonight, Al. You know what? Let me throw it to my man, Al Mack here, who's going to hit us with those trends. Al, how are you doing? But hold up. Before I throw it to you, Al, hit that thumbs up, everybody. We're trying to get it pumping in here. And thank you guys for showing up. We see you in the chat. Sorry you've been waiting, but the press conference, we got to wait until that press conference is wrapped. So here we are. Al Mack, what'd you think? Hit us with them trends. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up? So, yeah, it's interesting. Completely different than last week. Last week, I think the over cash in every single fight. And this week, the under went 9-6 for plus 6.3 units. So, it was one of those things, I think you mentioned it last week, where it was like, there's going to be some value on some unders now because those overs are cashing at a high rate. And I thought that going into this, like looking at all these lines, and like we'll get into it, but like so many fights where you thought were for sure going to go over went under, and it's just interesting. And then before we start, because there was so much to talk about this with this card, the prelims, I just want to say, because I kind of shit on Dominic Cruz like a couple weeks into this fight. So, Dominic Cruz, I was dead wrong. Dominic Cruz looked great. He looked amazing. For a 36-year-old man in 3 days. Yeah, he looked great. And Casey Kenny needs to just focus on his fight game and not, don't be hanging out and talking shit about women and all that stuff. Just if you can't beat a 36-year-old man.
What do you think, man? Are Casey Kenny and Megan Anderson, are they kind of chilling in the back tonight, both coming off the tragic L's? We'll end up we'll talk about Megan Anderson, but Al, I'm with you, dude. I thought Father Time, I thought Dominic Cruz, the layoffs, the cadaver ligaments, I thought he had a lot to overcome. I don't think we saw prime Dominic Cruz,
no,
but we saw a far better Dominic Cruz than I was anticipating. Fair play, man. Dominic Cruz, to the people who backed him, good stuff, because the dude really did look great, all things considered, man. So I'm very impressed, and it's not over for Dom Cruz, man. He's got a big fight coming, but that's the last prelim. I was kind of say what the headliner of the prelim, but our first fight of the night on the main card. And I got to tell you what, Al, I hate to say the commentary.
Oh,
it's been catching some flack lately, and I hate to say it, man, but they kind of started off the main card, the pay-per-view portion. I'm not digging the vibes, and I like Joe Rogan. I back Joe Rogan. He's been catching some flack lately. I'm starting to buy into this, man. The dude, I just don't know what the deal is anymore. If he's just not as passionate about the sport, if he's just not paying attention, but Alexander Rakic goes out here, kind of fights a really good fight against Thiago Santos, in my opinion. I mean, Alexander Rakic knows what do you need to do to beat a guy like Thiago Santos. Well, I mean, Thiago Santos' main path to victory is landing a big, powerful KO shot. Alexander Rakic, does a pretty good job rolling with the punches, avoiding any damage, avoids, sitting down and really absorbing some bad shots, kind of stays at distance, picks apart Thiago Santos, never really uses a heavy wrestling game, which honestly I thought should have been his most obvious path to victory and something that he focused on. Did end up getting in on the hips of Thiago Santos at times, but, honestly kind of ate some elbows, but I don't know if he ever hit a takedown in this fight. I'm pretty sure Thiago Santos never hits the mat. Nonetheless, Alexander Rakic works from range. I mean, Thiago Santos officially outlands Alexander Rakic on the significant strike count, but I do think the right man won. Yeah. I think it was a pretty solid performance from Alexander Rakic, all things considered. Good fight IQ, fair enough game plan. I had a bet on Alexander Rakic. Maybe that's why I'm defensive of him just getting a good, safe, solid W. I'll take a win any way I can get it. Alexander Rakic wins. What did you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, I could not agree more with you. And like, I was absolutely livid on Twitter about that narrative that they were pushing. And it's just, one, pay the fighters more and maybe you'll have more entertaining fights. And two, it's not Rakic's fault. It's the matchmaker's fault. What do you think is going to happen when you put this guy up against one of the heaviest hitters in light heavyweight history? Okay, like, this guy is a killer in Thiago Santos. Why you would have to be out of your mind to step in and get in the pocket with him? One, there's no fans, and yeah, he's on a pay-per-view card, but like, who cares? This guy he's 27 years old. He has his whole career ahead of him. Like, it's just absolute nonsense. The sport is worse for that kind of narrative being pushed, and this is exactly how I drew it up. And if Rogan and DC knew if they did their jobs, they would have known that that's how Rakic fights. His four of his 6 wins in the UFC were by decision, which is it's not exactly what you see all the time with these heavy hitters, but so now 5 of his 7 fights have gone by decision. And that's just how I envisioned it. I loaded up on over 1.5, over 2.5. And I had Rakic in a parlay with Sean Brady. And
beautiful.
And I just thought that there was no point in that fight where I thought that Rakic was in any trouble. And I'll say this, and I personally am a big fan of Thiago Santos, but like, I think he's at the end of his wick here with the UFC, and I feel like he would have if he wants to keep fighting, he would have a resurgence somewhere else. I feel like Thiago Santos is the type of guy that would fit in perfectly in Bellator. Like,
sure.
This fight was a lot better than what the commentary was hyping it to be. It was honestly despicable how terrible the commentary was in this opening fight. But it is what it is, man. And it's not always going to be perfect. And I'm always somebody to shit on Joe Rogan, but this was exceptionally bad. But it is what it is.
Right on. All right. Well, I tell you what, second fight that we had on the main card, man, this one, I pretty much saw it going this way. And, you were talking about you had Rakic paired up with Brady on a parlay. Earlier on my channel this week, my YouTube channel, I did a live stream actually yesterday, which I guess we're to Sunday at this point, right? But Friday night, I did a little live stream. I threw this parlay out there. It was going to be my parlay of the week. Islam Makhachev, Sean Brady. And, I mean, honestly, in retrospect, total money, man. When I gave it out, you pretty much got close to even money. I felt like both matchups specifically just favored those guys. I felt like it was pretty safe. Sure enough, early in the night, Sean Brady doesn't make it quick work, but a pretty dominant performance, ends up getting the submission finish in the 3rd round. Man, Islam Makhachev makes it look even easier. Dominance from start to finish. Does what he needs to do, only uses the striking to get into range and use those takedowns. This is a main training partner of Khabib. This is the guy who Khabib says is the future of the division. This is the guy who is the heir apparent in Khabib's eyes. What is not to love about Islam Makhachev? For my money, there's nothing more I love to back in this sport. In my opinion, the most money bet there is in this MMA game is a guy that you can depend on to go out there, not give his opponent the opportunity to fight his game plan, and is going to take that guy down, put him on his back, and at no point be threatened by submissions. Stay in control, keep the fight in that arena, because I got news for you guys. We see horrific judging in this sport consistently. I've never seen a fight where a guy was on top of the other guy 3 solid rounds, 5 solid rounds, and they gave it to the guy on bottom. It just does not happen. Islam Makhachev finds the submission in the third round, cashes a parlay for me. Al, what do you think?
I gotta say, I had some doubts with Makhachev personally, just because this was his first fight since long, almost what now, 6 or 8 months since Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov has passed away. So I felt like that might have been a factor because, like, based on what I read and based on the interviews and what I've seen in the past, he was just as close to him as Khabib was. So I felt like this might have been one of those things that we've talked about it before, where it's like maybe you're not doing it the same way that you were before. Maybe you're still grieving or whatever it is. I thought that there was a little bit of an intangible here, and seeing how Drew Dober, just the level of confidence that he had, I took a shot. I took a flyer on Drew Dober, but I will say this, and this is absolutely spectacular, was the under 2.5 cashed for plus 155. And I got to say, I didn't expect that to happen. And that choke that Makhachev put him in, that was insane. Like, that was so, I don't think we've ever seen anything like that, at least for lightweight. Like, we've seen heavyweights kind of do that. Like, it was like a head and arm choke, but
right. It was similar to the Von Flu, or the Von Prue as we call it now. It was a lot of really, it didn't at the time really look like, to the untrained eye, that Makhachev was really, doing anything that would warrant a submission. If you weren't really paying attention, the tap kind of caught you off guard. But it's that driving top pressure, right? That squeeze combined with driving that shoulder into the neck of Drew Dober, combined with that squeeze. And then even you see the way Islam, essentially bridges his body, gets all the way up on his toes. He's literally driving force from his feet all the way through his body down into the neck of Drew Dober. Phenomenal submission, man. Al, you brought up a great point, man, about Abdulmanap. And I do want to say this. Now that Khabib is retired, and we just have to talk, unfortunately, we have to keep talking about this. Khabib is retired, okay? This is a man of his word, okay? I don't see him coming back. Money means nothing to this guy at this point. He's got all the money in the world. As my man Joey Diaz has said in the past, do you have any idea how much the money this guy's earned in his career, how far that goes in Dagestan? I mean, this dude's wealthy for generations, right? This guy's the heir apparent, but here's what I wanted to get at. We don't have Abdulmanap, right? We don't have that leadership of this Dagestani crew. We don't have that father figure. We don't have that mentor figure. As Khabib has now retired and we see him from a total coaching standpoint, honestly, I think we're going to see a seamless transition. I've talked about this before briefly. I think we're going to watch Khabib essentially become Abdulmanap 2.0, okay? These guys are going to go out there. They don't want to disappoint Khabib. They don't want to disappoint the greatest of all time. They've had the honor, the ability, iron sharpens iron in this sport, to go in there and train with a guy like Khabib. They cannot let this guy down. I think we're looking at a similar situation. I do think Islam is the real friggin' deal, and I can't wait to see who he fights next. He absolutely deserves someone top-notch. I saw it thrown out there, Charles Du Bronx. I'm not against that, man. That is a gnarly matchup. Al, what do you think of that?
I mean, as a purist MMA fan, absolutely. But as a giant fan of Charles Oliveira, no, do not take that fight. Like, I don't want to turn this into a Charles Oliveira stan account, but no, Charles Oliveira's next fight has to be for a belt. But Islam Makhachev versus Tony Ferguson, well, that would do some. I think that would do numbers. You could headline. You could headline a. I mean, yeah, I don't know, maybe not headline a pay-per-view, but you could definitely get one of those good cards, like one of those loaded TV cards with Makhachev versus Tony Ferguson. That's the fight that we never got, right? That's the, this fight today with Drew Dober as the main training partner of Justin Gaethje was kind of like Khabib Gaethje 0.5 in a way. It was just
Sure.
Both of their, pupils, but I think Makhachev versus Tony Ferguson, that's a great fight. That's a great fight.
And don't get me wrong. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out there for the people, for the doubters. Islam Makhachev absolutely dusts Tony Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not even close. And let me tell you something else. I saw Nate Diaz chirping on Twitter, okay, trying to take indirect shots at my man Habib. Nate Diaz, you want this smoke with Islam Makhachev? Nah, you don't. Don't even think about coming back down to 155 and squaring up to this dude, because I'm going to tell you right now, Nate Diaz gets ragdolled and embarrassed by Islam Makhachev at this point. I just felt like I needed to throw that out there. Al, is there anything you wanted to say before we move on here?
I just wanted to say, I think, like, Makhachev, I forget the name of the Brazilian guy that he fought last, but he showed me in that fight that he is a high-level striker. He's a better striker than Habib. He uses those same weird techniques that Habib does with that, like, upper, almost like up arm uppercut. Like, he has really unorthodox, like, Russian style boxing, but like, He's not just a wrestler. He's a really good striker too. So, I think we've said this so many times, but sky is the limit for Islam Makhachev. But we should let Makhachev make some money first, and let's let the lightweight division figure itself out. But there is a time and a place for Islam Makhachev, absolutely, and he's been off for quite a while. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him turn it around rather quickly. So let's get to this next fight though, because I know everyone is dying to talk about this one.
This is the one, folks. Okay, Al. I've been betting in this MMA game, UFC, for a while now, okay? I've seen every which way a fight can go. But I'm going to tell you right now, this is a first for me. This is a first for the UFC. Aljamain Sterling is your new Bantamweight champion of the world by disqualification, 4 minutes, 29 seconds of the fourth round. Oh my goodness, Al, I'm still shook. I absolutely had a bet on Petr Yan. I absolutely was going to cash that bet. I'm going to go as far as to say this, Al, and this is God's honest truth. I really believe this. If you had a bet on Petr Yan, good on you. Solid read. He will be the heavy favorite in the rematch. You were on your way to cashing that bet. You placed a very solid, sound bet at an incredible price, okay? If you bet on Aljamain Sterling, hey, hats off to you. Congratulations. You received a gambling gift from the gambling gods. And that's really all that matters. You won the bet. You got to take a W any way you can get it in this game. But a bet on Aljamain Sterling was not a good bet. But you know what? In this game, good bets lose and bad bets win. I can't think of a better situation. This fight really comes down to this. Aljamain Sterling had some very good moments in this fight. He started very strong. He landed a good amount of significant strikes. But where this fight stood, I personally had Petr Yan up on the scorecards. Interestingly enough, one judge did have Aljamain Sterling leading 2-1 on their scorecards, but I absolutely believe Petr Yan, even on that person's scorecard, was about to win the fourth and was absolutely on this path to win the fifth round. Aljamain Sterling looked like a broken man. We were seeing body language indicators that, he was kind of counting himself out. The Aljamain Sterling path to victory, how Aljamain Sterling was supposed to win this fight, he was going to go in there and dominate Petr Yan with the wrestling. That is not what happened at all here, okay? Aljamain Sterling, I believe, goes 1 for 7 on takedowns. Meanwhile, Petr Yan goes 6 for 7 on takedowns. For my money, Petr Yan's winning this fight and is going to win this fight. We see Petr Yan repeatedly start slow and step on the gas and cook his opponents.
Yeah,
we were in the process of that going down. Sure enough, Aljamain Sterling finds himself in that spot. The miscommunication in the corner, right? Petr Yan asks his corner after first. It's a very complicated situation. The referee tells Petr Yan that Aljo's down, implying he cannot land the knee to the head. That would be an illegal shot, right? Petr Yan, who does not speak English, right, asks his corner in Russian, "Can I hit him?" They say yes. Then he asks, "Can I kick him?" One cornerman is saying punches. The other one yells out yes. Petr Yan throws the knee, blatantly illegal. The referee considers it an intentional illegal strike, which immediately makes it a disqualification if Aljamain Sterling says he cannot continue. Unfortunately, we have a situation in this sport with a championship belt on the line where a man who has absorbed an illegal shot literally has a win the fight free card in his pocket. And basically it's a matter of pride whether or not he pulls it. Now, I know this is long-winded, but I want to touch on two options here. Aljamain Sterling had two options, really. Now, option A, he really was hurt that bad and could not continue, okay? If that is the case, I'm okay with Aljamain Sterling winning this fight. Maybe I'm not okay with him winning this fight. I'm okay with the fight no longer continuing, right? Now, if Aljamain Sterling could have continued, now don't get me wrong, I'm sure he was diminished. I'm sure it was a very hard shot. But had he continued, I feel like, we wouldn't have to question his pride. We've seen a similar scenario where Anthony Smith in the John Jones match was put in a similar scenario, and he sucked it up. He said, you know what? Even though I know I'm losing this fight, I'm down on the scorecards. I just can't take this cheap win. Let's let this fight continue. And a point was deducted. Aljamain Sterling on the spot had to make a very, very tough decision. Like I said, if you truly couldn't continue, then that's just how it needs to be, right? We need fighter safety to be important in this sport. But if it's option B, and I know a lot of people are going to call him out, and unfortunately he's going to have to carry this with him for the rest of his career. If he really did say, you know what, I feel like I'm losing this fight, I'm going to take this cheap win and we can run it back later. I'll try to make adjustments. Maybe I win again. That really hurts his legacy. The thing is, though, we're not Aljamain Sterling. We'll never know. Aljamain Sterling is the only man who will ever truly know what the real deal was. And I know Aljo didn't want this win to come this way. When they put the belt on him, he immediately takes it off, throws it to the ground. He's crying his eyes out. Honestly, the most emotional man I've ever seen in the octagon. Just a very unfortunate situation. And the craziest way I've probably ever lost a bet in my life. Petr Yan loses his belt by disqualification. Al, I know I've been rambling. What can you add to this one, my man?
Oh, so much.
There's just so much.
So I had a bet on Sterling, and right away, this is more of like, I'm just a huge Ray Longo fan. If you guys don't know who that is, that's Aljamain Sterling's head trainer. The best. He's Chris Weidman's coach. He used to be Matt Serra's coach. He is just a funny New York fight game trainer who's been in the game for 25 years. He's an amazing follow, an amazing listen, just a super great guy. And you kept hearing him in the corner in between rounds telling him, like, at one point he said, the more that you do, the more that you're doing to yourself. So you need to take down the volume. You need to stop, you need to slow it down. And that's, Aljamain beat himself as soon as he came out there with that frantic, he was so frantic, and he was so he was just so high paced. And I feel like that was
really nervous energy, real adrenal. Yeah, I think you're right, Al.
And he kind of psyched himself out, and it's strange because, it's not strange. It's exactly how it should have played out, because Petr Yan has this really rudimentary style of this Russian boxing. It's very similar to Gennady Golovkin, where he just he stomps forward, and especially with the kicks, he's just so elusive, but also so imposing. And it's something, they said it well in the broadcast, that there's something about him that makes you get makes you get super nervous and super you're thinking of things like 7 other different ways because you don't know what he's going to do. He's just that typical scary, silent Russian man. You know, he's like a slightly taller hob job. But you know, this was the strangest thing because like I put in the results, the betting results for on the website at odds.com, and I got to the point where Sterling by DQ, and then I'm looking and I'm like, well, does the inside the distance for Sterling cash? And if so, like what? And then that brings me to my next point. You know, I'll say it: FanDuel, Bet365, DraftKings, PointsBet, all of these big billion-dollar companies need to refund that money. No, not even refund the money. They should pay out on Sterling, refund on Yan, pay out on the Sterling inside the distance, and they should refund on Yan. Any bets on Yan should, you know, if you bet on Yan and you bet with a very large commercial sports book, you should not have lost your bet because it is not within the spirit of the business for that to be a loss. Because, you know, you said that this is the strangest way that you've ever lost a bet. I will get you one further. Let's go back to the 2019 Kentucky Derby. A great horse by the name of Maximum Security won the race. The horse got a little bit spooked coming around the final corner by the crowd, and the horse like kind of cut off the pack, and he was ahead, or she, I'm not sure, but the horse was ahead, but the horse kind of got spooked by the crowd and cut everybody off, and the horse got disqualified. And I had a massive bet on Maximum Security, and Country House won the 2019 Kentucky Derby by disqualification and cashed at like 18-1. And what good sports books did then, and you know I understand we're talking about the difference between animals and people, but still, what the sports books did then is they paid out on Maximum Security and they paid out on Country House. And any good sports book that has goodwill will either refund. You can't say that they should pay out because, you know, it's just not, say what you want. Even if Yan had 2 points taken away going into that 5th round, that's still a fight. You know,
yeah,
you're still at a fight.
Dude, you're exactly right, and that's one thing I want to talk about. So let's think about alternate outcomes here, because the problem is I feel like we know more of the story after the fight, which is unfortunate. You know, the referee deemed it an intentional. You know, he almost deemed it, you know, as a DQ because of the fact that he told Petr, you know, you cannot do that, and then he almost immediately does it, right? Almost in jest of what the referee's telling him, right? Which would be, you know, blatant cheating, you know, a foul. But we kind of find out it's kind of a lost in translation type thing, right? You know, he receives bad advice or convoluted advice from his corner, thinks that he's throwing a legal strike. I mean, at least according to him, right? Here's what I think makes the most sense, Al. I think, first off, I wish Aljo, if he was hurt so bad he couldn't continue, I wish he wasn't, right? I wish we could have seen the fight go on. I would have been absolutely fine with Petr Yan having a point taken, Petr Yan even having 2 points taken, right? Because you're right, Al. You know, Petr's winning the scorecards on he's winning on my scorecard, right? And I expected him to go on to win that 4th round and to win the 5th round. But mathematically speaking, you're talking about a shot at having a draw here. And, you know, a draw would solve all this funky stuff we're talking about on the betting aspect, right? Aljo bettors push, they get their money refunded. The Petr Yan bettors push, they get their money kicked back. Honestly, I feel like that'd be a more clean situation here. But instead we have, like I said, the Aljo bet that didn't look to be a very good bet. I mean, Al, we've yet to mention the fact that Petr Yan was minus 3,000 to minus 4,000 live going into that fourth round. I mean, the books themselves said this fight is over, right? It's the funkiest thing, Al. This is truly the craziest sport that there is. And I feel like we end up talking about some weird anomaly thing, just these insane situations that honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a rule change based off this situation, because I feel like this is one of those things that you have like on paper in the rules, but for a guy to eat a legal shot and then have the choice, we're putting it on the fighter, not even the referee. It's the fighter's choice. Aljamain Sterling it's Modelo. Aljamain Sterling had a choice. If he stands up, he goes on to lose the fight. If he just lays down and stays down, he's the new 135-pound champion of the world. He made his choice. Can you really blame him?
No.
Aljo cashes. I just don't know what else to say. Is there anything left to say, Al?
Just one thing. I felt that it was really irresponsible by the broadcast to not mention that in the UFC, it's one of the only promotions. It's one of the only promotions that I know of, like on the big scale. I know Bellator as well, actually, but more specifically, where Petr Yan fought in ACB. And all of the promotions around there in Asia, Ryzen, one championship, you are allowed to knee a downed opponent.
I know it, man. And you got to wonder, Petr Yan, I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a UFC champion. And it's like, you feel like the dude's got to know better. But at the same time, that weird position, I feel like he couldn't necessarily see if, Sterling's knees were down. What if he thought Sterling was, crouching on the, like on the balls of his feet and his knees were up? It's just one of those things, man. We'll never know. We'll never know what went through Petr Yan's mind when he threw the shot, and we'll never know what went through Aljo's mind when he had to make that on-the-spot decision to probably go on to lose this fight or get the belt, undeservingly. And man, I in a way, I feel bad for Aljo to have.
Oh, absolutely,
because it's a no-win situation. Even to be the champion, nobody wants to be the champion that way. And
No.
and I feel bad for the guy, even though he is officially the 7th UFC 135-pound bantamweight champion. It's just unreal, man. When we saw this situation with Anthony Smith, John Jones, and I will say this, man, I know this happened years ago at this point. Tip of the cap to Anthony Smith. What his name's Lionheart. I really admire his ability to, say, what, that's not worth ending the fight. I'm not taking the cheap route out. Let me take this L on the chin, right? But, I knew this was going to happen someday, and sure enough, here we are, and it's the funkiest thing, man. Should we move on to the co-main event here, Al?
Yes, let's go.
It ain't going to take long to talk about, is it? Well,
Yeah.
maybe. There's kind of more going on behind the scenes. Yeah, the GOAT, the female GOAT, the lioness, Amanda Nunes, just goes out there, and I don't even know what you call it. You know what? I do know what you call it. What did they say? Non-event?
Yeah.
Is that the word that they used on the broadcast? This wasn't a fight. This was a travesty. This was a body for Amanda Nunes to go out and take out 2 minutes and 3 seconds of the first round of 5. Amanda Nunes, I want to say, throws 3-4 punches, lights Megan Anderson up, gets her on the mat, gets the inverted triangle armbar. She taps so fast. Non-event. This was nothing. And I will say this. I think this is the end. There's just no one left at women's 145 pounds for Amanda Nunes. There's just nobody left. And I think we see the division shuttered. I think we see her go do her thing at 135. And I still don't know really who we've got at 135. At least we have a division. At least we have a top 10. At least we have a top 15. We don't have that at 145. And the last contender has now fallen. I mean, to get someone for Amanda Nunes to defend this belt, you'd have to just be reaching. We're reaching into regional scenes. We're reaching into small organizations to even come up with anyone who can challenge Amanda Nunes for this belt. And let's be honest, there's nobody out there. This chick's on another level. And she showed it tonight. I don't know what to say, man. Amanda Nunes is just on another level. Yeah. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say. She's on a whole other level. I think that she could knock out some men in the UFC. She's just the best. I absolutely love Amanda Nunes. Like I said, I think it was last week, I said that she was my biggest gambling win over Rousey. I was wrong. It was actually Miesha Tate, where she was the plus 310 underdog. That was the fight where, like, literally me betting on that fight changed my life, like from a financial perspective. So like I said, I'll always have Amanda Nunes will always have a place in my heart. And as soon as I saw that walkout video, or the challenger has arrived video of Megan Anderson looking like a freaking ghost walking in there, like I don't know, she just looked like she was walking to her own funeral. It was a non-event. And then I'll say this: people who thought that there was no value on Amanda Nunes in this fight were dead wrong, because the under 1.5 cashed at plus 130, and it was the easiest bet of the night. Like there was no sweat whatsoever. A lot of
people love it, liking the over 1.5. I was like, I don't know. Nunes at 145 hits so hard. I don't know, man. And I had no betting action on this fight. I just felt like, what's the point? If I was going to take Nunes, I suppose I would have done it inside the distance, but I think that was near minus 400. This to me was just kind of the lull before the main event. Did you have anything on this one, Al?
Yeah, I bet a unit on the under 1.5, because I just feel like when Amanda, based on the promotion, and I know that's kind of like a casual or just like a basic way of handicapping, but the way that Megan was talking in like the promo videos of how like she's gonna come in flying, and it was just like good luck coming in flying against this woman who, like Dan Hardy said it best, like when she comes into punch, she's got a smile on her face. Like this woman, like I don't think there's any woman on earth who enjoys beating the shit out of people professionally than Amanda Nunes. And like Amanda Nunes could probably fight in boxing and knock some women out. Like this woman is, especially by the sounds of it, after like listening to her post-fight press conference, retiring is not in her gauge right now. She's just going to keep fighting. And I will say this is the one fight that makes sense, and it's the trilogy with Shevchenko, right? And like they said that last fight between them was pretty close, and I watched that fight in the lead up to this in the tape study, and I don't think it was that close. Like it was, you could have made a case for Shevchenko, but Amanda Nunes was the champion. So I understand that she got, the championship, the champion's advantage, and it is what it is. I feel like the fight to make is either a super fight cross promotion with Bellator with Chris Cyborg, which would be cool, but I mean, I would bet my freaking life on Amanda Nunes in that fight. Oh yeah. And then, or you have the handicap of her moving down to 135, which I feel like she's, I don't think she's got that many 135 fights left in her. And her versus Shevchenko is a very intriguing matchup, just because Amanda's getting older, and I feel like the weight cut will even things out a little bit. And then I think that Shevchenko, as she's getting older, she might be even more deadlier at that 135 division. So, but I'm hearing the thing about Juliana Pena. This will be the exact same thing. She will destroy that woman. It will not be, it will not be. You can't headline anything with that, because it will be, 90 seconds or less. So I feel like make the Shevchenko fight, or change the game and have a UFC versus Bellator, Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg, which that you could headline a pay-per-view with. So, but I don't think that's going to happen. So it is what it is. I freaking love Amanda Nunes. And yeah, I don't know what Megan Anderson's going to do after that. Like, Megan Anderson is still a contender, but you know, she looked terrible in this fight, and she just looked completely outmatched. And I like, what's she gonna do now? Go and fight Amanda at bantamweight? Like,
yeah, I don't know. Al, you saw during the live broadcast though, they showed my tweet on the screen, right? I said Amanda Nunes' baby could have beat Megan Anderson. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't show it. I tried to get it. They didn't go for it. But yeah, man, Nunes is the GOAT. There's nobody really close. Who's going to beat her? I don't know, man. It's going to have to be either somebody pulling off something fluky or somebody just kind of emerging and coming out of nowhere. But as it stands right now, man, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head who really is going to challenge this chick. She just is on another level. The skill set in every area, the power, the accuracy, it's just true rare form, something we've just never seen from a woman ever. I've talked about it before, Al. You know, every sport out there, every position of every sport out there, you know, it's arguable who's the greatest of all time. How rare is it in a sport of any form anywhere in the world that you can say this person is the unquestionable? There's no argument. There's second place is a mile behind them. Amanda Nunes is the greatest of all time who's ever done this. No one has a remote argument. I mean, it's not even worth discussing who's number two because it's just so far behind her. What can you say? What is there left for her to accomplish? Not much. A true living legend at this point. Amanda Nunes, I'm just, the sky's the limit. And honestly, she's approaching outer space. You know what I'm saying? We've blown through everything. We're struggling to find someone who makes sense for this chick to fight. It's just unreal. So let's move on. Oh my goodness, Al. This one, man, it's a heartbreaker for both of us. Jan Blachowicz, it's got to be that damn Hangman's Noose bracelet. This guy has captured magic. Jan Blachowicz, a man who started his UFC run at 2-4 against less than stellar competition, goes in here and beats Israel Adesanya. Okay, now I got to be honest, Al. These scorecards are a little bit funky to me. To say Jan Blachowicz won 4 rounds to 1, I don't know if I'm seeing that. For my money, I think it was a little bit closer fight. I think Jan Blachowicz probably did win those last 2 rounds convincingly with the takedowns because that's truly the story of this fight. I talk about it every time Israel Adesanya fights, and I always have this caveat, right? We may see something if someone actually goes in here and attempts and succeeds to take Israel Adesanya down. Jan Blachowicz at the halfway mark of the 4th round of this championship fight says to himself, you know what? Standing with this guy's not going really well. I'm going to try to take this guy down. And you know what? He succeeds. He shows us Israel Adesanya doesn't have great takedown defense. But I'll tell you what he really doesn't have, a get-up game or an ability, honestly, to transition anywhere off of his back. When Adesanya got put on his back, he was absolutely exposed as far as this situation goes in this sport, in my mind, in my eyes, from my opinion, watching a lot of fights. Now, don't get me wrong. Jan Blachowicz is a black belt, okay? But at no point did Israel Adesanya even attempt to transition, even attempt to post up, even attempt to get to the cage, or even attempt to get to his feet. He absolutely accepted position, while Jan Blachowicz, who honestly didn't get off a whole lot of offense until very, very late in the fight. But Jan Blachowicz slowly and surely transitioned from position to position, slowly worked his way to a more dominant position. And we saw in the 5th round, he finished off the last 10 seconds of this fight, full mount, raining down ground and pound. I gotta tip the cap. I gotta give props to the people who backed Jan Blachowicz in this spot. I did not. I had Adesanya. I thought he was going to go out there, keep the fight standing, be the sharper man on the feet. And I think a lot of times he was the sharper man on the feet. But the story of the fight was the takedowns, the execution, the good fight IQ of Jan Blachowicz. Like I said, I think the fight was closer. I think a 48-47 Jan Blachowicz makes more sense.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, man. I went and looked at the media scores because I wanted to see if there were people who scored this fight for Israel Adesanya, because I think Adesanya, there's an argument he may have snuck out the first 3 rounds, but I feel like he absolutely lost the last 2. And to end the fight in full mount, eating ground and pound, how can you give a guy a belt finishing a fight like that, right? But I looked at the media scores. 18 media members scored it 48-47 Jan Blachowicz. I think that's fine. 1 media member scores at 49-46 Jan Blachowicz. But these judges we had from the score tonight, these judges scored that fight at least 49-46. A couple of them even more beyond that on the Jan Blachowicz side. 7 media members actually scored this fight. Israel Adesanya, 48-47. Al, hit me with it, man. Did you have anything on this fight? What do you think?
Yes, I had the over 2.5 in this fight, which I felt very confident with and cashed. And then I also had a large bet on Israel Adesanya. And, it didn't matter because leading up to the ending, I was up like 9 units on the night. So it is what it is. I probably stuck my neck out a little bit too much on Adesanya. But I'll say this. The first 3 rounds of that fight, Israel was winning, no doubt. He even caught him with that counter hook to the temple that rocked Jan. And I think that's what woke Jan up, and that's what made him implement the takedown game. But I will say this, though. 10-8 rounds, when a guy takes a guy down at the halfway point of the round, is absolutely freaking ridiculous. A 10-8 round is not that, okay? A 10-8 round is like Oliveira Ferguson, right? That's a 10-8 round. The second round of Oliveira Ferguson, that's a 10-8 round. A 10-8 round is when you dominate the entire round. The first half of the 5th round, Adesanya was winning. So what? Sal Diamano is not a freaking MMA judge, okay? He is a boxing judge. He has judged Floyd Mayweather fights. He does not know what he's looking at, okay?
Oh.
And with all due respect, and I'm not taking anything away from Jan Blachowicz, I think he's awesome. I think that, and I said it like 2 weeks ago. I said if he wins, he solidifies himself as one of the best in light heavyweight, right? But also, I had it.
Yeah, what'd you score this fight, Al?
So I had it 3-2 Adesanya because, I give the last 2 rounds to Blachowicz, but I give the first 3 to Adesanya. And I'm not saying it's a robbery. I tweeted out that I had it 48-47, and if it happened the other way, I wouldn't be. It is what it is. But when they read off 49-45, that's absolutely ridiculous. That there's a problem, and people who know me and follow me know that I've never seen eye to eye with Dana White, and he said it too in the post-fight press conference. This is a joke. How do you give a 10-8 round to a guy who had, he was on top for half the round? That's only half of the round. That's 10-9, And
yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, he's in the dominant position, but it's not like he really executed a lot of offense, and he really inflicted almost 0 damage. I mean, honestly, Jan didn't have really strong moments on the ground until that last full mount flurry to end the fight, So I understand position matters, but I'll say this. I have absolutely no problem with Jan Blachowicz winning the fight.
No.
I think he fought a fairly smart fight. I think that wasn't necessarily the best Israel Adesanya we've ever seen. But it was the strategy. It was the takedowns of Jan Blachowicz that won him this fight. I think Adesanya would have had a legit chance to win had the fight stayed standing, but it didn't. Jan did what he needed to do. Great strategy, great fight IQ, and we now see the shortcomings in Israel Adesanya. And it's been shocking that no one really has taken him to that realm up to this point, but you've got to think, man, the blueprint's out there on how you beat this guy. And, we really need to look out for it. I'll say this, man, Jan Blachowicz, this guy just continues to impress. Who's next for Jan Blachowicz? What is his next matchup? I think you got to go Glover Teixeira, the old man that weighed in for this fight as backup. I think it's pretty clear cut now. Glover Teixeira is up next. And I tell you what, man, that's an interesting matchup for sure. What do you think of that one, Al?
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's a great matchup. We probably won't see that until September. I think that's a great matchup. And then something that I was dying to talk about earlier, and it just slipped my mind, was there's a young man by the name of Yuri Prochazka, who I think will be a serious problem in the 205-pound division. I feel like he's, Alexander Rakic looked okay tonight. Mm-hmm. I feel like Yuri Prochazka would destroy Alexander Rakic.
Wow.
So I think that Rakic and whoever wins, Rakic has to fight Dominic Reyes, and I'll be all over. Prochazka is fighting Dominic Reyes, and I'll be all over Prochazka in that fight. And I feel like if he wins that, he needs to get the winner of Jan and Glover, which will probably end up being in like December or maybe even next year. But I'm seeing people in the chat saying that that Jan outlanded Israel, and those numbers that you're seeing on the screen are unofficial. Go back, and because this has happened many times, go back and look at the replay, slow it down half. Half those punches that you think Jan are landing are not landing. Israel is slipping almost all of those punches. It's the same thing with Connor and Dustin. Israel has this way of rolling with so many of those shots that it looks like they're landing, but they're not landing. They're not landing flush. And, if you want to award guys for throwing punches and not landing them, cool. But that's not what happened. And Israel Adesanya won the first 3 rounds of this fight. And I would, you could probably maybe give the 3rd round if you were blind to Blachowicz. But besides that, it's unquestionable that Blachowicz won the last 2 rounds. My only issue is the 10-8. And I understand that based on the new rules or the new criteria that, the judges follow the criteria, which is fine. I think the criteria is wrong. If you have, top control over somebody for half a round, it should not be a 10-8 round. And, but it is what it is. And Jan Blachowicz is the, it's funny because I said straight up, I do not think that Blachowicz will win a decision. And I was dead wrong. And looking back, I realized, Blachowicz at 12-1 to win by decision was actually some value. And Blachowicz,
absolutely.
He's won 6 of his 16 fights by decision. If you've bet on Blachowicz to win by decision in every single fight in his UFC career, you're up $1,800 bet would return $1,800 going 6-10. So this guy not only has he been an underdog darling, but he wins by decision in these fights that he's not supposed to. And, you're going back further into his career, but yeah, man, it was, it was disappointing, but I said this a bunch of times too. It's one of those things where in this sport, if you really love the sport, when you lose a bet that you make, you more or less, that apart from getting your bet, losing your bet because of an illegal knee, more or less you get to learn something, right? And, we learned something. And, Adesanya doesn't have a terrible ground game at middleweight, but he's got a terrible ground game at light heavyweight. He had no answer whatsoever to Blachowicz, and that was the difference. It was the size on the ground, and I think that Adesanya just truly underestimated Jan Blachowicz. I underestimated Jan Blachowicz, and he's got the fact that he was able to not fall down when Adesanya landed that, that signature left hook to the temple that he dropped Whitaker with, that he dropped Costa with. That's when I knew, like, shit, he's in trouble. This is not good. And that's when I was like, this is likely gonna end with either Jan submitting him or this ending by decision, because after watching 5 rounds of that fight, I can't envision Adesanya at that size being able to knock out Blachowicz in that fight. And I don't think that there was anything spectacular that Israel would have been able to do to knock him out. What do you think?
Yeah, hey, listen, man. I just think it was a close fight, and I think the right man won. I have no problem with Jan Blachowicz winning. I think it was a very close fight. I feel like Israel did have a lot of success on the feet, but significant strikes lean Jan Blachowicz. I feel like the first 3 rounds were really, really close. Another spot where, man, it seemed like we really had some biased commentary. I think they kind of thought Israel was going to pull away with this one. Jan Blachowicz, twists the fight around with the takedowns, gets the win. So, that's pretty much your recap on UFC 259. A great event from an entertainment standpoint, a wacky one from a gambling standpoint. But let's take a look ahead, Al. What do you think? What do we have on the horizon here that we should talk about before we wrap this up?
So, UFC 260 coming up on March 27th. Stipe Miocic is putting the heavyweight title on the line against Francis Ngannou. Ooh. And then a fight that's not being talked about as much as it should is Volkanovski against Brian Ortega. I think that's a pretty interesting one for the featherweight belt. But let's talk about Stipe. Let's focus on Stipe for this before we end it. The Stipe Ngannou fight. I gotta say, as much as I love Stipe Miocic, and as much as I respect him and everything he's done in his time, I think Francis is gonna destroy him. I think the Francis that fought Stipe the first time has gotten exponentially better. Like 2.5x times better. Like he's on another level, and I think that Stipe fought well against Cormier, but if Stipe comes into this fight thinking that he's going to have that slower pace type fight that he did against Cormier, he's going to get knocked out, I think, because we've heard Stipe complaining about the eye. We've even heard him talk about possibly retiring at some point. This is a guy who has a full-time job outside of the UFC. I feel like he's done everything that he wants to do in this sport. So all the respect to Stipe, but I think that Francis Ngannou is going to make short work of him. And I think that minus 140 on Ngannou is a pretty good price. And I think that I see that the under is lined at like 2.5 rounds. I see that has some good value at it too, because to be honest, and I'm super interested to hear what you have to say about this, I just don't think that Stipe is the same fighter that we think he was. And I don't think he was that great against Cormier. Like, that fight was okay, but like, if he thinks that he's gonna pummel against the cage with Francis Ngannou, that's not going to work. Like, and Francis Ngannou is the type of guy that every time that we've seen him, he's gotten better. And like, we saw 11 seconds against Rosenstruck, and that he even said it himself, like he wished that he got to fight longer. But I can't envision Stipe winning this fight unless he just somehow squeaks out a decision. That's the only path to victory I think that I see. What do you think about this?
Oh man, dude, this fight, I mean, realistically, I don't see this fight being different than the first fight from a game plan, from a stylistic standpoint. I don't think Francis Ngannou's really grown much stylistically. I don't think this guy is going to have rock solid takedown defense. I don't think he's a better wrestler. I'm sure he's slightly improved in a lot of these areas that were exposed in the first fight. It's just any fight involving Francis Ngannou, I don't know how you can have any confidence. The guy's either going to go in there and knock someone's head off very early and make it look like he completely is just on another level and an unstoppable freak of a human being, or someone's going to go in there and do what Stipe did the first time. It's the bull versus the matador. Can you avoid that ferocity? Can you avoid that touch of death? Because if you can, and you can drag this fight into a second, into a third round, the danger level decreases of Ngannou, and I mean, it's like, Stipe fought a very, very good fight the first fight. He honestly ate some very hard shots and, never really got rocked, never really, went down, ate them and, survived and went on to win the fight, and with a very good game plan, doing what he needed to do. But at the same time, to be able to go out there and do it again for 25 minutes to avoid that touch of death. I mean, Ngannou consistently beats guys that are more technical than him, that are more polished, that are more experienced, right? Alistair Overeem, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. It just doesn't matter how sloppy, how bad, how lack of technique Francis Ngannou is. If he just lands that shot, none of that matters, I think of the flurry he threw on Jairzinho Rozenstruik to end that fight. I mean, it's the most amateurish, freakish video game, a dude just running forward, winging shots I've ever seen. But sure enough, he whiffs 1, 2, 3. Number 4 clips that chin. Jairzinho loses consciousness instantly. I mean, and that's the thing. It's the Ngannou factor. It's that, it's chaos mode enacted, right? He either is going to do that, or that kind of goes out the window as he gets tired and hasn't found the shot. It's just a matter of when that point comes, right? And it just makes things incredibly hard to read. Something tells me as I stand right now today, pre-research, just initial lean,
right?
Something tells me that for Stipe to be able to survive 10 rounds against Francis Ngannou, it feels like he kind of came out of that first fight, it's kind of skated through, did eat some shots, but just did enough and took over, got the solid win. I feel like Francis might catch him this time. I mean, it's just I don't really have like a technical analysis, like I said, because I think Stipe is the more polished, the quote unquote better fighter, the more skilled fighter. But that just goes out the window with a guy like Francis Ngannou with that freakish power where it just takes one shot. And I think I lean right now towards the Ngannou side. I think that, the likelihood of Francis Ngannou going his whole career without being the UFC champion, it seems unlikely to me. And I think I lean Ngannou ever so slightly, but not a high confidence spot. And I definitely one that I could change my mind on as we approach that day. What did you say? What was the co-main event on that one, Al?
Alexander Volkanovski against Brian Ortega for the featherweight belt, which is
my goodness, Al. Volkanovski showed us he's the real deal with those 2 wins over Max Holloway. I mean, look what Max Holloway did in his last fight, and Alexander Volkanovski, kind of shut that down and kind of did to Max Holloway what Max Holloway did to Calvin Kattar, albeit not as drastic and not quite the beatdown, but from a statistical standpoint, in retrospect, to be able to outpace and outstrike a guy like Max Holloway, it seems insane, but yet he did it both fights, right? And then Brian Ortega, the dude looked so phenomenal in his last fight, took the time off, really sharpened up the striking, just looked great, looked to be a totally revitalized, totally changed man. was pretty much a jiu-jitsu guy. We'd even seen him lose a lot of fights striking and then, catch a submission late in a fight that he kind of was down on the scorecards. Man, he looks to be so much more well-rounded now. This is a very, very good fight. I think I probably have to lean Volkanovski as it stands right now, but Ortega appears to have ascended, to have elevated his game, and I think we could have a very, very good fight on our hands. What do you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, it's interesting. Volkanovski is lined as the minus 180 favorite with Ortega plus 165 on the other side. I feel like that's like pretty much right where it should be. Like I don't see value on either side based on the betting line. I do see perceived value on the under 4.5 rounds at plus 165. With that being said, the way that I envision this fight, again, like you said, without any like hardcore research put into it, I envision this fight going the distance. But at 165 on the under 4.5, plus 155 on fight goes the distance, no. I think there is some value there, but I can't remember any fight. When was the last time that we saw a featherweight fight end inside the distance? I feel like that hasn't happened in quite a while. Or actually, I think the last time that it happened, I was cage side, and it was when when Holloway beat the shit out of Brian Ortega to the point where they stopped the fight in the fourth round because he couldn't come out of this corner. So I think that was the last time that we saw a featherweight fight not go the distance. But yeah, I feel like Volkanovski. Yeah, I feel like Volkanovski is a. I just don't like that line. Hopefully, people come in on Ortega and we can get some good value on Volkanovski. But the way that it's lined right now, it's lined like pretty much exactly where it should be. So I will say this though. I'm gonna completely switch gears. There is one fight on this card coming up, and I don't want to spill the beans. But there's one of the greatest betting opportunities that I have seen in quite a very long time.
Wow. Okay. You've got my attention.
A man by the name of Tyron Woodley is fighting another man by the name of Vicente Luque. And Vicente Luque is a minus 250 favorite against Tyron Woodley. And I think that there is a ton of value on Vicente Luque at minus 250. Because there is no universe in reality where Tyron Woodley wins this fight. It will not happen. Vicente Luque is one of the like most unheralded guys in the UFC welterweight division. He is so tough. He will not lose this fight. I promise you. And I'm not someone to ever, I don't ever bet big parlays ever, but Vicente Luque is the biggest parlay piece that I've seen in years on this card. Like, and I'm going to lay the 250 just straight up. And I don't even know. I don't think Vicente Luque even gets a finish here. But I know that Tyron Woodley is a shell of himself. And he's stepping up in competition. Well, he's not stepping up in competition based on his last fight with Colby Covington. But like if he comes out like how he did against Covington, Vicente Luque is going to destroy him. And minus 250 is hell of value. And what do you think about that look?
Yeah, I mean, it's Vicente Luque for me. Tyron Woodley's a broken man. Fights exclusively with his back off the cage. The most gun-shy fighter I've ever seen. I'm actually surprised we're seeing him one more time. I think he's totally broken. I think he's totally done. I think Vicente Luque is the pretty clear and obvious play. I'm totally with you.
Cool. Well, yeah, that one, that's my main event as far as gambling on for UFC 260. Like, I just don't see it. I can't envision any reality where Tyron Woodley beats Vicente Luque. this will not happen. And I bet you, I see it a little bit on some other sites, but the best line that you can get is Vicente Luque minus 254. And I got Vicente Luque at minus 250 a couple days ago, but it's going up. So bet it now. And I don't even like to say this stuff because I don't want, I want to continue to bet this line until it goes up to like, there's value on Vicente Luque right up to minus 300 because, like I said, there is no reality where Tyron Woodley wins this fight. It will not happen. Like, I promise you. I promise you.
You're going real. You got me worried now. You're going real hard on this one, dude. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. But yeah, man. I think Luque. Like I said, I'm surprised to see. I'm definitely surprised to see Woodley getting back in there, and I think Vicente Luque is a pretty solid guy with really good punching power. So yeah, it's gonna be Vicente Luque. Al, is there anything left to say before we get out of here and wrap this one up?
No, man. We got UFC 260, and then like the whole, beyond the UFC, we're going into Bellator 256 with Bader Machida. We got Anthony Johnson against Yoel Romero. We got ONE FC coming to TNT for like North American TV. So as far as MMA betting goes in the next, for the next foreseeable future, it's just, we're getting everything that we thought that we should have got last year. Last year, everything got screwed up. We missed out on so much, but right now with the way that 2021 is looking, the spring of 2021 is just unbelievable. There's so many cool fights. And I'm just so excited. And look, it doesn't matter that sometimes we say things that are wrong, because either way, if you bet against the things that we say, or that I specifically say, you'll make money. So, if I make these outrageous predictions, it is what it is, man. I like tonight with Izzy, I was really very, very, very confident that Israel Adesanya was going to win that fight. He didn't. I put my money where my mouth was. He lost. But it doesn't matter because I won on all the other fights, including one of my fighters winning by a freaking illegal knee, and not to rub it in or anything. And you need to get your money back for that fight. Did you get your money back for that fight? How did your book grade that?
Al, what fantasy world are you living in? Not a chance, man. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna happen, dude.
That's ridiculous, man.
I'd be very surprised to check and see that I had my money back. I don't think that's gonna happen, my dude. But who knows? Maybe we'll see. It's crazier things have happened, right? But I think the Petr Yan L stays. But I don't know, dude. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Hey, you're Al Mack. I'm Bleed. What do we have left to say, man? Al, is there anything you want to say before we totally wrap this one up?
No, just thanks for hanging out at 4:30 in the morning with us and shooting the shit here.
Absolutely. Big thank you to everybody in the chat for stopping by. Phenomenal discussion. Thank you guys for being here, for tuning in. If you're watching the replay, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm Bleed. He's Al Mack. We'll see you at a similar time next week. This cards just never stop around here, Al. It's just card after card after card, and we will be here serving up them recaps every week. We are outie.